Hey, hey, everybody. This is Nevin Gusak, your host of the Populist Patriot. I'm going to do another live stream before I have to run out. This is my take on anti-Semitism, Jewish question, whatever you want to call it. Give you a little story of what happened. A family member at a recent gathering sent an article all about Jewish achievement, all these mostly great American Jews and some foreign-born Jews who accomplished so much, in many ways positive, in a few ways, from my point of view, like Armand Hammer, for example, and Karl Marx, for the negative. But many contributed very positive things, or just achieved very good things for them personally. However, while that is welcome, and this particular family member did it because someone sent him a joke that was poke fun at Jews, and he was rightfully offended, and kind of thought it was not funny, which certainly I could understand. However, I was thinking about it, and while that article was clearly fascinating, it made me think about my Jewish identity and the notion of any ethnic, racial, or religious identity. And if there are any anti-Semites in this audience, you're going to be disappointed. If there are any people in the audience who feel that my people, meaning the Jewish people, can do no wrong whatsoever, and what we all as Jews have to circle the wagons against any legitimate criticism of our fellow tribes members, you're also going to get disappointed too. I look at people as individuals in this sense. There are good Jews, there are bad Jews. There are good Hispanics and bad Hispanics. There are good African Americans and bad African Americans, et cetera, around it goes. And to me, when you're holding up people, if you have racial or ethnic identity, you shouldn't worship these people solely because A, they're Jewish, and because B, they accomplished so much with money or college degrees or whatever. You need to look at them as individuals. And sadly, this article didn't include this particular individual who was Jewish, who was Orthodox, and he was American, and he was American first. His name was Aaron Feuerstein. He was an industrialist, a productive industrialist, a textile magnate, multimillionaire, had textile mills in Malden, Massachusetts. And what happened was, and I'm going to read it to you a little bit, when the Malden Mills factory burned down on December 11th, 1995, Aaron Feuerstein, religious, rich Jew and American, and he was an American first because he had this spirit. Just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you're alienated from the national life of the country. Now, there are plenty of Jews, powerful Jews, that are alienated from the national life of the country. Look at Paul Singer. Look what he did to Sydney, Nebraska, Kabbalah's company. Look at Larry Fink and the executives in BlackRock and Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, who used to be of Goldman Sachs, the chief executive, CEO there. Yeah, those Jews are alienated, just like Jews who were also members of various communist parties throughout our history who were very hostile to the security of the state of Israel and Zionism, which sought to preserve and fight for the existence of the state of Israel against genocidal Arab and Islamic dictatorships that were also enemies of a powerful and strong America. But Aaron Feuerstein was an American He was concerned about American workers and America first. The American national community was first and foremost his tribe. And he combined the best, most wonderful aspects of the Jewish religious tradition. That's a Jew I'm proud of, not because he was Jewish, not because he accomplished a lot in the material world. It was because of the way he lived his life. As a people, if you are a person who are attached to a race, an ethnic or religious, you got to seek improvement for your people, your nation, and you have to hold up people who are good, who are kind to their members of the community, especially the weaker members of the community. And no, being proud of your race, your ethnicity, your nation doesn't mean genocide and hate and eugenics, or especially negative eugenics or anything like that. It means something positive. It means helping the weaker members of your community, building your community up within the mosaic of races and cultures within the United States, as long as they're still loyal to the American national community first and foremost. Anyways, so when the Malden Mills factory burned down on December 11th, 1995, Feuerstein used his insurance money to rebuild it. Imagine that. And to pay the salaries of all the now unemployed workers while it was being rebuilt. Feuerstein spent millions keeping all 3,000 employees on the payroll with full benefits for 90 days. He came to prominence globally by going against common business practices, especially at a time when most companies were downsizing and moving overseas. Feuerstein said he could not have taken another course of action due to his study of the Talmud and the lessons he learned there. Quote, I have a responsibility to the worker, both blue collar and white collar. I have an equal responsibility to the community. It would have been unconscionable to put 3,000 people on the streets and deliver a death blow to the cities of Lawrence, Malden, and Methuen. Maybe on paper our company is worthless to Wall Street, but I can tell you it's worth more. Quoted from Parade Magazine, 1996. How do you like that? The racially nationalist fascists and national socialists and the open anti-Semites within the communist movement, what do you have to say for that? Are Jews genetically programmed to be greedy? This shows that that's not the case. It's about individuals within a community realizing the right thing to do, to extrapolate the good principles within their religious and impart it from their family members, their friends, their schools, and their community. And yes, having empathy, which, by the way, in countries like Denmark, they actually teach empathy, which I am for. By the way, a program of teaching empathy in this country. Why? Because that will encourage a civic nationalist consciousness in this country. Because then people who are more powerful will then hopefully empathize with the weaker sections of society and view them as brothers and sisters needing a hand up and help. And these weaker elements will have to also continue to give back to the community too, to the nation, to the companies, to the organizations or whatever. It's a two-way street. So this shows that Jews are not genetically programmed to take over the world and be greedy and bankrupt everybody. However, this program does turn our noses up to those individuals, whether Jewish or whatever. Take the Jews, which is my religion. We turn our nose up in disdain towards those who call themselves Jewish or identify as Jewish, who in this country, for example, they become communists, who seek to cripple Israel in the name of anti-Zionism and anti-imperialism, which endangers the Jewish people in those countries, in Israel, ultimately, in my opinion. Those Jewish individuals of power and wealth who destroy towns like Paul Singer did of Sidney, Nebraska. They don't get passes for me just because they're Jewish. And because, let's say, Paul Singer accomplished a lot on paper, made donated money, philanthropy, and everything else. Big fucking deal. Those are not people. Just because you get a lot of money and because you have college degrees and you accomplish a lot on paper and then invent this and that and everything else, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You know what? How someone's worth should be measured, not only through wealth and power and degrees and accomplishments, but who they are as people, how they live their lives, how they treated other people. So powerful individuals like the late Aaron Feuerstein, that's someone who should have been in that newspaper. That's someone who is worthy of our praise and support. 21st Century Longest. Hey, what's up? Oh boy, loyal listener. I have no doubt that there are Americans of Jewish descent that are true patriots, but Israel is still untrustworthy. They sell our technology to China, and there was the attack on the USS Liberty. I got to read up on the USS Liberty. I've seen kind of both sides of the story. America had a very split personality since the outset of the state of Israel in 1948. We helped them, but we also undermined them, like a lot of other American allies throughout the world. Israel giving technology to China, I really crap on Israel for selling technology to China in my book, Turning the Page, because the fact of the matter is that we really don't have allies 21st Century Longest. We only have intersections of interest to a degree with different countries. And check this out, 21st Century Longest. The technology that Israel exported to China, and they've been doing it since as far back as the mid-1970s, and certainly in the 1980s. That technology was then put into the weapon systems that China sold to virulently anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish governments in Saudi Arabia, Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and Iran. How do you like that? There are even reports in the Israeli press of Israeli businessmen through third countries selling technology and goods, even items of military application. And I point this out in my book, Volume 2 of Turning the Page. They sold it to Iran under the mullahs, Gaddafi's Libya, and Saddam Hussein's Iraq. In fact, during the hostage crisis of 1980 and 1981, the Israelis sold Iran tires and other parts for their American-made F-4s that were sold under the dictatorial Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. But Israel is not unique. West Germany subsidized the East German Deutsche Demokratische Republik, the East German dictatorship of the SED, the old Socialist Unity Party, the Communist Party. West Germany sold military technology to the West Germans, East Germans, machine tools, etc. France sold technologies that were used to enhance Soviet-made aircraft. For example, MiG aircraft, like machine tools and whatnot, like Raquel and others, companies in France. The British sold China a lot of weapons starting in the 1970s and accelerating under that great anti-communist Margaret Thatcher. I mean that kind of sarcastically. You know, the problem is it's not unique to Israel. It's a problem of corporate forces, capitalist forces within so-called allied countries where we have intersection of interests. and they feel that they could build up their markets. They can play one country off another, as in the case of the Iran-Iraq war. Israel tilted towards Iran as opposed to Iraq, even though in my book I pointed out that they traded with both sides and whatnot. It's greed. A lot of it is greed, and a lot of it is really fucked up geopolitics. That's really what it comes down to. When it comes to foreign lobbies, by the way, just to establish my bona fides, I do take if I were to choose a side in Israel, I would take a Zionist nationalist position. However, I mean, generally, I'm a nationalist across the board pretty much. I like countries having national self-determination as long as they don't align themselves with America's geopolitical enemies too closely. That's my dream, at least, semi-interdependent nationalist states based on populist and semi-democratic or democratic principles aligned with each other. But at the end of the day, when it comes to like foreign lobbying, I don't think Americans should work on behalf of any foreign governments and foreign corporations. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not a pawn of any country. Just because I might identify with particular countries doesn't mean that Americans should work on behalf of them. So I don't believe in a red China lobby. I don't believe in the Putin-Russia lobby. I don't believe in the Israel lobby, even when there are things I agree with the Israel lobby on and other things I don't agree with the Israel lobby on. And certainly I don't agree with the Putin-Russia lobby and the red China lobby and the Iran lobby and Saudi Arabian lobby. I definitely don't agree with them either. No, Americans, Americans should not work for them. And the only people that should promote their interests are trade representatives and other diplomats from those countries. That's it. And I really question how much of a diplomatic presence Saudi Arabia, China, Iran, and the Russians should have. I mean, it's not to say we shouldn't talk with them, but at the same time, a number of those countries, and yes, even Israel is a quote friendly country, they're all involved in aggressive espionage. Israel is noted for aggressive industrial espionage, and that needs to be cracked down on. Nobody should be committing industrial espionage. That's my stance on that. I didn't know about that point, China reselling those weapons. Yeah, Richard Fisher, who was fired from the Heritage Foundation from taking a strong anti-communist China stance, he had mentioned that too as well. Harry Wu had talked about that, the famed China dissident. Well, my point still stands that America and her quote allies sell to China as well as other countries for short-term profits that hurt us in the long run. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Greed is the creed. Corporate capitalism is the problem, which is manipulated by totalitarian geopolitical adversaries. Thanks for clearing up the foreign lobbying. It is a problem. Yeah, because I want to show that I'm not a plaything of any particular country to a degree, except the American. And I have serious disagreements with the American government as currently configured right now. Anyways, so my view on anti-Semitism, like all forms of racialism, totally against it, totally against the crimes that have been entailed by all forms of racialism, and it's connected to its various forms of social totalitarianism, its aggressions. I talk about that in my book, Turning the Page. In the first volume, the aggressions of the Third Reich in Japan and how America appeased them through trade, and also, just the genocide and the mass human rights violations resulting from these countries. I also talk about, by the way, the Third Reich's plans against the United States and Britain in a book called Brown Dawn too as well. But at the same token, so I think anti-Semitism, I know this is going to piss off the anti-Semites and the racists perhaps in my audience of subscribers. It's dumb, it's genocidal, it's horrible, and it's short-sighted politically too. In this country, you're never going to deport races you don't agree with and everything else. You're going to have a civil war on your hand. The bigger problem is not the race issue. It's the people versus the oligarchs and the people not having control of our destiny. And our neighbors, whether Black, white, Hispanic, or Jewish, our neighbors in the community, we all have the same problems. We all have the same challenges. Many of us love our country, and we have to really take a look at who our adversaries are. You're going to find patriots amongst the so-called left. You're going to find patriots on the right. You're going to find people that are politically homeless who are the truest patriots. And we have to develop a grand coalition of different classes and different races to fight the actual enemies of the country. And yes, our geopolitical enemies are Russia and China. They're allies within the United States, the domestic elements of the domestic left and other extremists. Yes, there are geopolitical enemies, but we also have to also think creatively, forge a party based on the principles of national solidarity, solve the problems as why people are joining these extremist movements, and join hands in a grand populist coalition to overthrow the oligarchs, to prevent extremists from gaining ground in this country, and to protect ourselves from geopolitical adversaries, and allowing our so-called allies not to overly take advantage of us. So again, the show, we oppose anti-Semitism, we oppose all other forms of racialism, but at the same time, we are for, when we look, if we're proud of our ethnic group or a religious group or a racial group, we're Croatian, Irish, African American, Cuban, whatever. If you want to send articles showing pride in your people, great, fine, based on their achievements, degrees, wealth, whatever, wonderful. God bless. God bless. God bless. You know what? That's terrific. But on the other hand, we also have to look at the accomplishments, how not only the accomplishments, but how they treated other people in their national community. I think someone like George Lincoln Rockwell would agree that American Jews who are American patriots are okay. I'm not a national socialist. Well, I'm glad you're not a national socialist. I probably would disagree. Rockwell, I've read parts of his book because I have an interest in, I actually wrote a book, wrote an essay called The Collectivism of the American Neo-Nazi Movement since 1945. And what I've read about Rockwell, he is, for the most part, anti-Jewish. There are a few Jews he liked that were kind of anti-Semitic Jews, like Condon McGinley, for example, of Common Sense. Yeah, but I kind of take issue with that. I thank you for all your comments. But yeah, George Lincoln Rockwell is not exactly someone I would say would be universally in favor of Jews like myself for a variety of different reasons. And besides, he didn't like conservatives either. He hated conservatives. He viewed them as reactionaries, actually. And in some ways, he made legitimate points. These are people that want to crush labor, destroy Social Security, Medicare, because Medicare was formed in the 60s under LGJ. And, he was against, this sort of oligarchic, plutocratic arrangements. Of course, he wanted to create his own version of a dictatorship, which entailed a lot of problems. He hated the Birch Society, too, as well. Well, the neo-Nazis hated the conservatives and the Birchers and whatnot because they were radical individualists and they were for class polarization from the right. So, yeah, Rockwell, got to depart from you on that. Really, again, the nationalists that I would align with are American School, the advocates of the American School for Political Economy, as well as, Franklin Roosevelt, to a degree, with aspects of his New Deal, and especially Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was totally Chad. That guy overcame bullet wounds, still speaking, exercised like crazy, was a nationalist, was a populist, but at the same time supported private property and spearheaded against Marxism. If we had a million Teddy Roosevelts, I will have to get myself even more new hobbies outside of politics and history. You've seen interviews with Rockwell saying that, I think, but I need to rewatch it. Okay, let me know 21st Century Longest, although the guy is still a National Socialist, so can't align with him, so we got to disagree on that point. Thank you all for listening. You have a great evening. God bless. God bless you all. God bless America. Stay safe out there. Take care.